Hi, my name is Ajay Vij and I'm the industry head for financial services at Infosys. Today I'm very fortunate to have Juan Gomez, the Chief Technology Officer at Llyods Banking Group, and Mohammed Rafee join me. Juan is joining from London and Rafee is joining me from Bangalore. So thank you both for joining me for the CTO session and a very warm welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ajay.
Great. So look, we are all sitting in our homes and it's remarkable how efficiently and securely we were able to shift operations remotely in a matter of days. Technology advancements in collaboration tooling, investments in elastic infrastructure, and telecoms have played such an invaluable role in all this. And it's sort of as hard to imagine how this narrative would have played out if COVID-19 would have struck us some 15 years back. So I find it baffling to just imagine that. Today, technology is the front and center of the business strategy. In fact, it is often the strategy. It impacts your customers, employees, business partners, society, and other constituents in their interactions across the wider enterprise. And let me just tee it off with you, Juan. Most banks that we work with are modernizing their core banking systems and are setting up strong sort of architectural foundation for the future that is mobile, cloud, and AI first. Given that you are leading and driving the technology strategy of LBG, how are you shaping the architecture both from an apps and data perspective? And what are your sort of learnings and advice for us? If you may start, Juan.
Sure, Ajay. And probably just a comment to your intro that so COVID-19 not over. I think it is crucial that we take the learning. So the places where we have reacted well and do more of it when this is over or when this is different. I believe that there are shifts that are there to stay. So maybe not from 0 to 1, but there are moves. And to your question, Ajay, so what to look at, and probably now is a great moment, a great opportunity to do it. I would separate two big blocks. So one is to do a bit of introspection. So take stock, look at what you have. So technology families, business domain driven, contact with customers, variety and diversity of the legacy state, and in there the type of interventions can be towards simplification and modernization. So you can look at getting rid of the long tail of very old technologies and raising the bar for the whole organization. And a very distinct block, which is the opportunity to build clean slate. So to do a complete transition from where you are on an ongoing organization, on a large and enduring organization, is very tough. It's much easier said than done. But you can still start anew, and you can incorporate to the anew at the pace that you're able to travel.
Great. Rafee, let me shift to you. Given that most banks that we deal with have fairly archaic core banking systems, the systems of record are also not well documented often. So how do you curate knowledge to realize the architecture vision that Juan just explained in a sort of non-disruptive manner?
Sure. Thanks, Ajay. So I think having done this for a few of our large financial services clients, what I realized is it's a combination of arts and science. And the reason I say art is because Juan talked about the long tail. And what we realized is when you start looking over technologies that have been accumulated over decades, you're always bound to find surprises. And you have to figure out a way to deal with it. Science to a large extent for us comes in terms of the toolings that we use essentially to do a lot of that curation in an automated way, right? So there are a few ways. One where you curate a lot of knowledge from systems automatically through curation tools, where we have seen about 60% of it could be done, but you still need SMEs to bring in a lot of that knowledge. And then a lot of work is being done through process mining as well, right? Because process mining essentially enables us to identify a lot of variations in existing key processes, and then the data discoverability. But then the key eventually again is to do this in a very evolutionary way. And what we find is, we have been following this principle we call micro is the new mega, which is while you lay out the big vision, we always need to do it in a micro way so that we can, unbundle it, pick apart, and quickly modernize it and deliver it to business, and then keep repeating it in an agile way so that every few weeks and months you have something being delivered to the business.
Thank you. That's interesting, Rafee, and we've seen a lot more engagements on the back of these principles. So thank you for that. One, coming to you, cloud. I mean, it's such an important foundational block for the new enterprise architecture. At Lloyds, how are you approaching cloud adoption? I mean, be it cloud native, cloud neutral, or multi-cloud? And what are sort of your top non-functional priorities also? I mean, we talk about privacy, security, etc. But just give us a sense of the, how are you approaching cloud from an enterprise architecture perspective and the whole looking at different aspects as well of cloud.
Sure. And again, one of those that we could spend days, right? So there's a lot of promises on cloud, which is just a new ecosystem where engineers, software engineers, and DevOps and QE can thrive. Yeah, so you pick a young software engineer, and he or she will naturally develop in cloud. Yeah, it's not like a consideration. The challenge is more the adoption at enterprise scale, particularly for companies that have been around for enterprises for a long period. So that for me takes off your non-functional. So how to raise the bar and actually upskill and change the way you look at how to build and resource the new applications. And as to the cloud direction, so on the claims of cloud native and hybrid and multi-cloud, I think it's important to define what we mean by that, because it means different things in different organizations. So I would say that cloud native only applies really to compute today, and probably Kubernetes is the change in paradigm in compute, and that's something mostly accepted. But for the rest, it is not the case. So for data that I just referred to as something that has huge gravity, this is not resolved. And you can think of some choices like Snowflake with pros and cons, but in the main, it is not solved. So this depiction of something almost magical moving from one place to the other on the flick of a switch is not there yet. So that also covers probably, rather than multi-cloud, yeah. So the flick of the switch doesn't exist. Multiple clouds is a choice. So not to have not to be overly dependent, and because you are in the end in the hands, when we refer to public cloud, of a few incumbents. If you are a large organization or you're supporting a national infrastructure, you need to take a strong resiliency considerations. So I believe that there is the choice of having more than one cloud. I believe there is the choice of having a multi-cluster management layer where you decide what are the things that you're taking away from engineers and managing for the whole enterprise. So things such as Kubernetes or the JavaScript frameworks, or the data management tools, or refreshing containers, and allow the engineers to focus on building the applications, not on resourcing them. And that opens the next complexity, which is organizational design. So what do we mean by site reliability engineering, and what is the new shape of a 24/7 support team close to where the app is being built? And being built today means weekly or daily releases. It's more of a frequent release cycle.
Rafee, what are the trends you are seeing with our clients? I mean, Juan gave a very good picture of how he is looking at cloud adoption. What do you see, and how do you see this space evolving when you talk to clients?
Yeah, I think what Juan said is largely what the view that we see across most of our clients as well in the FS space, right? But then when I look at the journey itself, I see three stages. One, a lot of them, actually, a lot of banks have made a stated strategy that by at least 2025 they want to be fully on cloud. But then what does that mean? Juan raised a good point, is what does cloud mean? And the way we see it is a lot of them are largely thinking of hybrid cloud, which could be a combination of the private cloud and one or more public clouds, right? And that is how they are looking at it. And today, most of our clients are anyways at this stage of moving or accelerating their cloud journeys. And then comes the second stage, which is where they are focused on app and data, is how do you then move apps and data, and which apps do you modernize, which do you lift and shift, which do you rewrite, and how do you enable new digital capabilities, and then moving data at a petabyte scale, right? And that's becoming the norm. And then the third bit comes is about this whole operations management, governance, security, and compliance around this. And this is where, again, I think Kubernetes is becoming, it looks like it may become the new middleware, at least for the application and services that we are building. And we are seeing a good amount of investments around Kubernetes and using Kubernetes to orchestrate the workloads across different clouds.
Moving to just a related question, data will be so critical. I mean, as more and more enterprise services shift to cloud, I mean, data movement at scale. Rafee mentioned about petabyte scale movement, but you have different sort of depending on bank size, etc. But data movement at scale in a secure and compliant manner becomes extremely critical. Equally important is traceability and transparency of data when you deal with regulatory issues, compliance sort of workloads. How are you approaching this when you think of data on cloud at scale within Lloyds Banking Group?
Mm-hmm. So probably the first thing to say is that we do it with extra care. Mm-hmm. So it is an increased responsibility. So we hold our customers' data, and we need to bill for it. We need to protect it. I would say that there are some, on the one hand, technical considerations that are still evolving. Things such as key management. There are choices. You just need to understand the choices and be coherent and implement the policy and the controls on the back of it. I would also add that I believe the focus should move from protecting people to protecting the data. So we don't need to protect the data from people. We need to protect the data itself. So data at rest or in transit is a very insufficient definition of what you need to do to secure data, but you can label data. So data is secure on its own wherever it sits. And today this is available, only that we are not there as to maturity. So we can label data, we can have a system to learn what is data that is sensitive, and do not allow it to go anywhere else. Mm-hmm. There are things such as homomorphic encryption, which is early days on how we do we do that at scale, and probably, and this is my personal overlay, the most stringent treatment for data that is available should be available for as much data as possible. So it's not like a by exclusion, but having very high standards on security and privacy.
Thanks, Rafee. From you have been personally involved with a couple of large engagements where we had programs which entailed petabyte scale, movement to cloud, and we've seen workloads on payments, compliance, regulatory workloads, which have not been easy from a compliance perspective, regulatory perspective as well. What are your top 2 or 3 learnings that you have had in the last few years of dealing at that large scale data movement to cloud? And some of the banks we've been dealing with have been the front runners in cloud adoption as well. So any sort of views, Rafee?
No, sure, Ajay. So I think I would say 2 or 3 top things that come to my mind, right? The first is getting architecture right has been very critical. But then again, as architects, a lot of times we focus too much on perfection. Right, and instead of, but what we are seeing increasingly is, given the pace at which the cloud providers are evolving, the open source is evolving, the tech space is evolving. I think there is a shift that we had to do from this perfectionist view to more experimenting and evolving view, right? So we said, okay, how do I define an architecture that will enable us to evolve, enable us to change, so that, you know, if I find a better technology, if I find a better tool, then I'm able to adapt to it without fundamentally, bringing everything down anyway, right? So, and that's something that I have seen with several clients, where initially we actually started with one platform, one cloud provider, one set of tools, and over a period of 2 to 3 years, we had to make a turn to a different sort of tools and platforms, largely because of some of the strategic decisions made, right? So having that architecture that enables evolvability change is very critical. Second, that we also found is designing for, and Juan also made a reference to it, is security by design and privacy by design has been very critical as well, right? So part of it is key management that Juan talked about, but now what we are seeing is also data residency comes in for a lot of your global solutions. A lot of your data privacy laws are coming in with GDPR, with CCPA and all that stuff. So how do you then bake all of these right into the architecture and into the platform has become very critical. And third important thing that we also realized in this whole data space is to plan everything very agile, right? So is to have more frequent releases and do that in an accelerated manner. And for that, having a right agile operating model and engineering model and a lot of extreme automation also has been critical. Otherwise, it takes a lot of time to plan and less time to execute.
Right. So, Juan, coming to something which is you very passionate about, which is about learning. I mean, as the adoption of newer technologies increases within the bank, within the enterprise, I would say, the culture of lifelong learning has to become key, and particularly because the technology shifts are happening at an ever faster pace than before. What are your thoughts on the culture of learning, and what kind of capabilities specifically from a CTO lens do you see we need to bring in to improve developer productivity and collaboration mindsets? Any sort of, I know you've been discussing about this topic for a few months now, so any sort of views on this?
Indeed, and I do feel passionate about learning, Ajay. I was just listening to Rafee. So I love the humbleness with which you approach things. Yeah. So when you said the trend to perfection of the architects. Yeah. When I know that you have solved quite complex pictures. Yeah. So well, I feel happy to be here. So back to the question on the learning. Yeah. So and what do I feel is effective or things to be done? So one is to give to empower the community, so to make them successful. So we do run a few communities in software engineering, which is extreme programming, but also open source and DevOps and quality engineering that are very, very strongly bonded. So you see engineers there that as a stereotype are more introvert people, completely thriving in that environment, and much stronger in that community than through the line of management that they have. And they do share and completely learn, so get stuck on things that they expose and they find a way. And those represent a few hundred people in Llyods Banking Group, and that's probably a very strong bond around those communities. The second thing, which for which we still don't do enough, has to do with creating a system of learning, so becoming a learning organization. And in the case of engineers, we need deeper learning. So we cannot learn from PowerPoints when you are about to put a software in place that touches a few million people and tens of millions of transactions. So it's not approximately, it's something deep where you understand all of the consequences. So in that, I believe we do need a way to inventory the skills. We need a way for each person, for each individual to devise a learning path. So what are the items that I need to include and what's the shape of this? We need to allow for accreditations. So to know what we have in in our shop, in our teams, so that we can deliver on challenges or in the day-to-day or in the investment portfolio or in what a customer's new demand are, and to know where we can go to fetch those people with those skills. And I think that is also a factor of talent attraction and retention. So being in a place where you know you are going to learn from people that are your peers, and there's a system in place that allows you to go at it and learn more, become deeper, and you're expected to learn and raise the bar.
Right. In our organization, it's a 250,000 people company, and we are very aware of the fact that we can't protect jobs going forward, but we can protect skills. I think that is what we are focusing on, and the way we are engaging with the clients, one is about looking at what capabilities do they have at this point in time, a sort of analytics of what you have now, what are the technologies required for the future, the pathways to learn, and then having the experimentation capabilities as well, right? People have to experiment, sandbox environment, and then I think sort of creating cohorts of learning to keep this whole momentum alive. And to your point, accreditations, etc., have a tremendous value, but people have to stay consistent with the learning. So I think that from a culture perspective, I think it has to be deeply embedded within the organization. And from our perspective, right from chairman of the board to the middle management to senior leaders, everybody has been stressing on this, how critical this is going to be. And Rafee, coming to you on this topic, I mean, you've been front runner of some of these platforms that we're creating. Coming to specifically developer productivity and collaboration. So what is you doing in this space? And you had this very interesting program of Top Coder. So just talk a bit about that as well, please.
Sure. No, I think we realize that most of our clients today are becoming technology companies, and they are asking for a different type of engineering talent, right? And largely, the way we define that is we call them as full stack developers and power programmers. Who not only understand a tech, but the entire technology stack. It could be a scripting stack, it could be a services stack, a big data stack, an AI stack, or any of the different ones. And what we found is the kind of capability we need to train and enable them was very different, right? And that's where the Wingspan platform that we internally use, that our ETA team has developed, is fairly good in that it helps our developers to learn, but at the same time also create playgrounds on the cloud where they can actually practice some of these things and learn through it. And the second thing is we have also changed the model where we are now moving towards continuous learning, right? Because instead of our employees coming to our training department or the facility in Mysore, the learning is going to them wherever they are, anytime, anywhere. And the idea for us again is like Nandan, our chairman, says, we need to remove all friction except for motivation, right? So the only thing that stops anybody from learning is the motivation. But those are some of the things that we are doing. And now we are bringing in this whole workplace capabilities within learning so that you could do a lot of audio, video, code sharing. You can do pair programming as part of it. And that's how we see a lot of this future evolving. And now with some of the things happening on the cloud-based development, right, with the code space that is there and the other tech where you could code on browser, we now see that we can push a lot more stuff to our employees where they can practice a lot of it without having any special purpose hardware.
No, I think technology has been a great leveler. I mean, what will define success in the future will be the motivational divide for everybody. So I think that's very well said, Rafee. Thank you very much. Look, from a technology perspective, the new emerging areas, while in the consumer space, there's a lot of development happening in the area of artificial intelligence, edge computing, and the whole Kubernetes ecosystems. What kind of work is underway at Llyods in this space, or are you planning in the future? It would be good to kind of get some insight from you on this latest technologies, Juan.
Sure. So I think AI is one of the two things that are still changing in the world. So one would be Moore's law, so the compute, in short, compute and store. And the other one would be that we are trying to copy the way our brains work and to perform better than humans at problems. Yeah, and there's a few that we have already ticked that machines can do better than humans. Yeah, classification problems typically. I think that portfolio of things that machines do better than humans will increase. And this is one of those cases where technology is way ahead of us. If we were actually able to integrate it and implement it in everything that we do, not as an afterthought, but as a pre-thought, as a first step in design, we would be in a completely different space. So the short answer is that we don't do enough. We do things in AI. So we do have a cognitive engine that learns intents from customers. You can use our mobile app and you can find it there. And the interaction is with a machine that is actually learning and building new intents and finding out what the best answers are. I think there is a divide, and because we are in a highly regulated industry, from facilitating information to actually closing end-to-end transactions for customers. So fulfilling deeper needs, like I want to make a payment and the machine helps me in a way that anticipates it and understand what I really want to do and suggests different and executes it. So there is a way there. So things that are already attained in things like autonomous drive, which is a complicated problem because it's not just roads. There's people. There are a lot of randomness that comes into play. We don't operate at the same level in some of the industries, and I would include financial services there. So what are the best things that I can do to improve my retirement? What are the best things that I can do in my financial planning? There are enormous opportunities to go at with AI. I think the second thing you mentioned was edge.
Yes.
So if I was to build a clean slate, so no constraints, something for a large number of customers who actually carry in their pocket, and we all have this close to ourselves, a server, yeah, computer or a server, I would try to put as much of the compute and particularly the needs on Bionic or ML in the server that we carry in our pockets, instead of putting it in my own resourcing, whether that's in the cloud and I don't really know where it is till I get to the VM and the bare metal, or in our own premises. And equally, for personal identifiable data, I would like, as a customer, just to carry it with me in my devices, in my pocket, in my domain, instead of it being shared when there is no need in other places. So for me, both from a resourcing effectiveness point of view, so we have a lot of devices, not just mobiles. There's a few billion, so there's like 3x devices relative to mobile that have compute capability that can interact. So I think that's that covers the edge one. Yeah. So those are the type of things that I would do clean slate, and we're not doing enough on edge because it is such a change of frame of mind. Yeah? So thinking about resourcing in a completely different way, resourcing in the pockets of people, yeah, or in their tablets, in the places that they go, or even in their fridge. Yeah, so there are fridges with enough memory these days. So it's something that we're getting there. The third thing that you mentioned, Ajay, was Kubernetes. Yeah, so and I think as I said, so I think the compute paradigm is sorted. I think what goes into the again, the design and how we build the applications and how we resource them can still evolve. Yeah, so moving on to functions, so only spinning up and resourcing when needed. So this concept of serverless,
Yes.
it is reality today, and we don't do enough. Again, I think there is a big click to happen in the way we approach things from even from an engineering point of view, that needs to happen at a larger scale to have impact. But those are things that are available. So we're not speaking about any wheezy things that may happen in the future. We're not speaking general AI. No. With the available technology, there's so much to go at and improve our lives. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Any sort of last minute comments? But look, from both of you, anything, Rafee, from your side or Juan? Otherwise, you
Yeah.
know,
So just one for me that now is a very good time to move into action. So I think you need to put in the balance strategic alignment and coherence. So what are the things that you stand for and that you want to do, and where is that exchange of value, but equally getting on with it. So staring at it and moving forward in 3 years time and looking back and saying we didn't really react and the world is probably moving, there are shifts that are identifiable, for me is not the best option probably. So in most cases it would be better to get stuck and to do something about it.
thank you, Rafee.
Yeah, I think I'll just say 2 points, right? One, I earlier said, don't architect for perfection, but architect for evolvability. And that has been a big learning for us, which I think as a techie, we all have to embrace and do it. And have that experimentation and evolution mindset, which is very key. And second thing is, Juan also referred to it, is I think execution, right? A lot of times, I think if we can execute projects in an agile fashion, in an accelerated fashion, experiment, learn, refine, revise, and be persistent, then I think wonders can be done. So I think those would be the key main takeaways for me that I would want to share as well.
Thank you so much. Look, I think, as I say, crisis doesn't sort of create new trends, but it definitely accelerates trends which are underway, right? I think we hope that this is a watershed moment and this does accelerate all the trends you talked about, and people take real action, as one you mentioned, and build architectures for evolvability. I think is something which is very fascinating. And look, thank you so much for the time. It's a fascinating conversation and truly appreciate your time. And I'm sure I learned a lot, but others will also learn a lot from this conversation. So thank you so very much.